Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Sai. Jaya Radha Madhava Punya Bihari. 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 Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Gopi Jana Jaya Radha Madhava Punya Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Punya Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Punya Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Gopi Jana Yashodanandana Braja Jana Nandana. Yashodanandana Braja Jana Nandana. Jamuna Tira Vanachari. Jamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Punya Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Jaya Radha Madhava Punya Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Punya Bihari. Jayam Swaparam Vibrajagacharya Siddhar Sadasyaman Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Prabhupada ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavindra ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki Jai. प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद से अद्वैत गदाधर शिवास आदि गौर भक्तवृंद की जय। श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण गौ गोपीनाथ श्याम कुंड राधा कुंड गिरि गोवर्धन की जय। वृंदावन धाम की जय। नवद्वीप धाम की जय। स्वामी तो भक्तवृंद की जय। गंगा माई की जय। जमुना माई की जय। तुलसी देवी की जय। भक्ति देवी की जय। स्वामी तो भक्तवृंद की जय। All glories to the assembled Lord. All glories to the assembled Lord. Thank you very much.
Okay, we're going to start the class now, and we'll talk after the class. Shrilesh, I have made you co-host. Do you see that?
Yes, Prabhu.
All right. Hare Krishna. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So having class today is very, very maximum auspicious because the appearance day of Lord Nityananda Prabhu. And he is so merciful upon the fallen souls. Some say he's even more merciful than Lord Chaitanya because he delivered Jagai and Madai, whom Lord Chaitanya was prepared to kill. We'll talk a little bit at the end of the class, a little bit about Lord Nityananda. So we're in the introduction to the Bhagavad-gita as it is, which Prabhupada composed from his heart on February 19th and 20th, 1966. As of that time, there was no temple, there was no ISKCON. That was later in July that ISKCON was actually incorporated. So at this time, maybe he has a couple of people that he knows. He's living in an apartment and has some association with a Dr. Misra, and he's giving him opportunity to do kirtan. So we left off, I hope you all marked off where we left off, but we're midway through. The position of Ishvar, the Supreme Lord, is that of supreme consciousness. The jivas are living entities, being parts and parcels of the Supreme Lord, are also conscious. Both the living entity and material nature are explained as Prakriti, the energy of the Supreme Lord, but one of the two, the Jiva, is conscious. The other Prakriti is not conscious. That is the difference. Therefore, the Jiva Prakriti is called superior because the Jiva has consciousness which is similar to the Lord's. The Lord is supreme consciousness, however, and one should not claim that the Jiva, the living entity, is also supremely conscious. The living being cannot be supremely conscious at any stage of perfection, and the theory that he can be so is a misleading theory. Conscious he may be, but he is not perfectly or supremely conscious. The distinction between the Jiva and the Ishvar will be explained in the 13th chapter of Bhagavad-gita. The Lord is Kshetragya, conscious, as is the living being. But the living being is conscious of his particular body, whereas the Lord is conscious of all bodies. Because he lives in the heart of every living being, he is conscious of the psychic movements of the particular jivas. We should not forget this. It is also explained that the Paramatma, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is living in everyone's heart as Ishvara, as the controller, and that he is giving directions for the living entity to act as he desires. The living entity forgets what to do. First of all, he makes a determination to act in a certain way, and then he is entangled in the actions and reactions of his own karma. After giving up one type of body, he enters another type of body, just as we take off and put on clothes. So there, Prabhupada is referencing a verse in the second chapter, Vasangsi Jirnani Yata Vihaya. As the soul thus migrates, he suffers the actions and reactions of his past activities. These activities can be changed when the living being is in the mode of goodness, in sanity, and understands what sort of activities he should adopt. If he does so, then all the actions and reactions of his past activities can be changed. Consequently, karma is not eternal. Therefore, we stated that of the 5 items, Ishvara, Jiva, Prakriti, time, and karma, 4 are eternal, whereas karma is not eternal. The Supreme Conscious Ishvara is similar to the living entity in this way. Both the consciousness of the Lord and that of the living entity are transcendental. It is not that consciousness is generated by the association of matter. That is a mistaken idea. That is the idea of the gross materialist or the atheistic scientist. That is their opinion. The theory that consciousness develops under certain circumstances of material combination is not accepted in Bhagavad-gita. Consciousness may be perverted and reflected by the covering of material circumstances, just as light reflected through colored glass may appear to be a certain color, but the consciousness of the Lord is not materially affected. So in this connection, Lord Chaitanya preaches that the greatest blasphemy is to consider that when God comes down to this material world, his consciousness is affected by matter. Lord Chaitanya says that is the greatest blasphemy. Such consciousness, such understanding, thinking that God becomes materially affected actually means one is an atheist, a pashandi. Lord Krishna says, Mayad Yakshena Prakriti, chapter 9, verse 10. When he descends into the material universe, his consciousness is not materially affected. If he were so affected, he would be unfit to speak on transcendental matters as he does in Bhagavad-gita. One cannot say anything about the transcendental world without being free from materially contaminated consciousness. So the Lord is not materially contaminated. Our consciousness at the present moment, however, is materially contaminated. The Bhagavad-gita teaches that we have to purify this materially contaminated consciousness, and therefore, Lord Chaitanya's first instruction, Chaito Darpana Marjanam, First instruction is to cleanse the mirror of the mind. The mind is the mirror of the soul. So in contaminated consciousness, the mind is covered by layers and layers of dirt and dust. But by chanting the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, gradually the mirror of the heart, the mind, is cleansed. In pure consciousness, our actions will be dovetailed to the will of Ishvara, and that will make us happy. It is not that we have to cease all activities. Yes, that is a common misconception for many people. Many Hindus think in order to become free from the effects of karma, I have to cease all activities. But that is not what we learned in the 18th chapter of Bhagavad-gita. Here Prabhupada says, rather, our activities are to be purified, and purified activities are called bhakti. That is such a good definition. Purified activities are called bhakti. Activities in bhakti appear to be like ordinary activities, but they are not contaminated. An ignorant person may see that a devotee is acting or working like an ordinary man. But such a person with a poor fund of knowledge does not know that the activities of the devotee or of the Lord are not contaminated by impure consciousness or matter. They are transcendental to the three modes of nature. We should know, however, that at this point, our consciousness is contaminated. When we are materially contaminated, we are called conditioned. False consciousness is exhibited under the impression that I am a product of material nature. This is called false ego. One who is absorbed in the thought of bodily conceptions cannot understand his situation. Bhagavad-gita was spoken to liberate one from the bodily conception of life. And Arjuna put himself in this position in order to receive this information from the Lord. So this is the second time Prabhupada has made this point, because Arjuna is an ever liberated associate of the Lord. But look, this again, he said this previously. Arjuna put himself in this position in order to receive this information from the Lord. One must become free from the bodily conception of life. That is the preliminary activity for the transcendentalist, and that is exactly where Krishna's instructions began, in chapter 2, in those 20 verses, where Krishna discussed the differences between the body and the soul, between matter and spirit, between that which is temporary and that which is eternal. One who wants to become free, who wants to become liberated, must first of all learn that he is not this material body. Mukti, or liberation, means freedom from material consciousness. In Srimad Bhagavatam also, the definition of liberation is given. Muktir hitvanyata rupam swarupena vyavastati. Mukti means liberation from contaminated consciousness of this material world and situation in pure consciousness. So, this word, swarupena, swarupa, that means your original position. That Swarupa, that your original position, is outlined by Lord Chaitanya. Jivera Swarupa Hoy Krishnara Nityadas. The original pure position of the soul is to be the eternal servant of Krishna. All the instructions of Bhagavad-gita are intended to awaken this pure consciousness. And therefore we find at the last stage of the Gita's instructions that Krishna is asking Arjuna whether he is now in purified consciousness. Purified consciousness means acting in accordance with the instructions of the Lord. This is the whole sum and substance of purified consciousness. Consciousness is already there because we are part and parcel of the Lord. But for us, there is the affinity of being affected by the inferior modes. But the Lord, being the Supreme, is never affected. That is the difference between the Supreme Lord and the small individual souls. Why does he say small individual souls? Because the dimension of the soul is 1/10,000th part of the tip of the hair. In other words, the spirit soul is atomic, and Krishna is Vibhu, the great, the all-powerful, the almighty. We are Anu. We are atomic in size. What is this consciousness? This consciousness is I am. Then what am I? In contaminated consciousness, I means I am the Lord of all I survey. I am the enjoyer. The world revolves because every living being thinks that he is the Lord and creator of the material world. Material consciousness has two psychic divisions. One is that I am the creator, and the other is that I am the enjoyer. But actually, the Supreme Lord is both the creator and enjoyer, and the living entity, being part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, is neither the creator nor the enjoyer, but a cooperator. He is the created and the enjoyed. For instance, a part of a machine cooperates with the whole machine. A part of the body cooperates with the whole body. The hands, legs, eyes, and so on are all parts of the body, but they are not actually the enjoyers. The stomach is the enjoyer. The legs move, the hands supply food, the teeth chew, and all parts of the body are engaged in satisfying the stomach, because the stomach is the principal factor that nourishes the body's organization. Therefore, everything is given to the stomach. One nourishes the tree by watering its root, and one nourishes the body by feeding the stomach. For if the body is to be kept in a healthy state, then the parts of the body must cooperate to feed the stomach. So this example that Prabhupada has just given about the different limbs of the body satisfying the stomach comes from a verse spoken by Narada Muni in his instructions to King Prachini Barishat, which is found in the 4th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. And this is an example Prabhupada uses repeatedly throughout all of his preachings in his books. He loves this example. Similarly, the Supreme Lord is the enjoyer and the creator, and we, as subordinate living beings, are meant to cooperate to satisfy him. This cooperation will actually help us, just as food taken by the stomach will help all other parts of the body. If the fingers of the hand think that they should take the food themselves instead of giving it to the stomach, then they will be frustrated. The central figure of creation and of enjoyment is the Supreme Lord, and the living entities are cooperators. By cooperation, they enjoy. The relation is also like that of the master and the servant. If the master is fully satisfied, then the servant is satisfied. Similarly, the Supreme Lord should be satisfied, although the tendency to become the creator and the tendency to enjoy the material world are there also in the living entities, because these tendencies are there in the Supreme Lord who has created the manifested cosmic world. Now, at this time, I feel it necessary to mention one thing. You may be wondering why I read this so slowly. And the reason I do that is because Prabhupada's books are textbooks. They are not like ordinary books where you just read. These books are reference books. They're textbooks. So in order to really understand the subject matter, you have to read slowly, sentence by sentence. You don't read it like you would something else, like a newspaper article or some novel. It's not written like that. It's written like a reference textbook. And you have to understand sentence by sentence, phrase by phrase. So that's why I go so slowly. We shall find, therefore, in this Bhagavad-gita that the complete whole is comprised of the Supreme Controller, the controlled living entities, the cosmic manifestation, eternal time, and karma or activities. And all of these are explained in this text. And another thing about Prabhupada's books that I'm now remembering is that Prabhupada repeats many things over and over. Why? Because that is how you actually can learn something. When something is repeated many times, then it stays with you. So you'll see in reading Prabhupada's books, so many things he repeats throughout. And that is just to drive home the point. So all of these taken completely form the complete whole. And the complete whole is called the Supreme Absolute Truth. The complete whole and the complete Absolute Truth are the complete personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. All manifestations are due to his different energies. He is the complete whole. It is also explained in the Gita that impersonal Brahman is also subordinate to the complete Supreme Person. And he gives the reference. We found this reference at the end of chapter 14. And I stressed this when we covered that verse. Brahmano hi pratishta aham. So Brahmana, the Brahman effulgence, he certainly, pratishta aham, is resting on Krishna. The word aham means I. Krishna spoke this verse. So what is he saying? Brahman, the impersonal Brahman, the Brahma Jyoti, certainly resting or coming from me. Brahman is more explicitly explained in the Brahma Sutra or Vedanta Sutra to be like the rays of the sunshine. The impersonal Brahman is the shining rays of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Impersonal Brahman is incomplete realization of the absolute whole, and so also is the conception of Paramatma. In the 15th chapter, it shall be seen that the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Purushottama, that's two words, Purusha, Uttama. Purusha means person, Uttama, transcendental, topmost, is above impersonal Brahman and the partial realization of Paramatma. Partial meaning partial of the whole absolute truth. In other words, the absolute truth is three features: Brahman, Paramatma, and Purushottama. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is called Satchit Ananda Vigraha. The Brahma Samhita begins in this way: Ishvara Paramaha Krishna Satchit Ananda Vigraha. So that word Vigraha is very important. Vigraha means form or body, not just Satchit Ananda. So here this verse means Ishvara, the controller, Paramaha, the supreme controller. Who is it? Krishna. He has a body, Satchit Ananda, eternal, full of knowledge and bliss. Anadir Adir Govinda. He has no origin other than himself, Govinda being the original name of Krishna. Anadir Adir. He has no origin other than himself. Sarva Karna Karanam. Karana means cause. So Karanam, the cause, Sarva, of all other causes. Govinda Krishna is the cause of all causes. He is the primal cause, and he is the very form of eternity, knowledge, and bliss. Impersonal Brahman realization is the realization of his Sat, eternity feature. Paramatma realization is the realization of Sat and Chit, eternal knowledge. But realization of the personality of Godhead, Krishna, is realization of all the transcendental features, Sat, Chit, Ananda, eternity, knowledge, and bliss, in complete vigraha or form. People with less intelligence consider the supreme truth to be impersonal, and that is found in all religions, whether it be Hindu or Christian or Muslim or Jew. This misconception is common to every religion. People with less intelligence consider the supreme truth to be impersonal, but he is a transcendental person, and this is confirmed in all Vedic literatures. And this verse here, this was one of the first lines I heard directly from Prabhupada when I heard his first class, when I was sitting in his class back in New York in 1973. This was the first thing I learned from Prabhupada. Nityo Nityanam Chaitanas Chaitananam. And I can still remember how Prabhupada was explaining this. As we are all individual living beings and have our individuality, the supreme absolute truth is also, in the ultimate issue, a person. And realization of the personality of Godhead is realization of all the transcendental features in his complete form. The complete whole is not formless. If he is formless, or if he is less than any other thing, then he cannot be the complete whole. The complete whole must have everything within our experience and beyond our experience, otherwise it cannot be complete. That is a very important sentence. Very important. The complete whole personality of Godhead has immense potencies. Parasya Shaktir Vividhaiva Sruyate. How Krishna is acting in different potencies is also explained in Bhagavad-gita. This phenomenal world or material world in which we are placed is also complete in itself, because the 24 elements of which this material universe is a temporary manifestation, according to Sankhya philosophy, are completely adjusted to produce complete resources which are necessary for the maintenance and subsistence of this universe. So here, what Prabhupada just said is an explanation of the first verse of the Ishopanishad. If you study the Ishopanishad, what Prabhupada just said here, he uses the same understanding in explaining Om Purnamadak Purnamidam Purnat Purnam Udachyate Purnasya Purnam Adaya Purnam Eva Vashishyate. That's the first verse of Ishopanishad. There is nothing extraneous, nor is there anything needed. The manifestation has its own time, fixed by the energy of the Supreme Whole. And when its time is complete, these temporary manifestations will be annihilated by the complete arrangement of the complete. And there is complete facility for the small complete units, namely the living entities, to realize the complete. And all sorts of incompleteness are experienced due to incomplete knowledge of the complete. This is why we study Bhagavad-gita. This is exactly why. We want to understand the complete. So Bhagavad-gita contains the complete knowledge of Vedic wisdom. Yes, you just learn Bhagavad-gita thoroughly, you'll have a summary of all Vedic wisdom. That's why this Bhagavad-gita is crucial. Can't go on to other subject matters, Bhagavatam or anything else, until you thoroughly understand Bhagavad-gita, which is why, although we went through the 18 chapters, that is why I wanted to go through this introduction, because we're reviewing everything we should have learned in the 18 chapters. All Vedic knowledge is infallible, and Hindus accept Vedic knowledge to be complete and infallible. For example, cow dung is the stool of an animal, and according to Smriti or Vedic injunction, if one touches the stool of an animal, he has to take a bath to purify himself. But in the Vedic scriptures, cow dung is considered to be a purifying agent. One might consider this to be contradictory, but it is accepted because it is a Vedic injunction. And indeed, by accepting this, one will not commit a mistake. This reminds me, when I went to Vrindavan, my first visit to India in 1975, I remember that they were cooking the food that was offered to the deity and the food that was eaten by the devotees. How was it cooked? The fuel was cow dung. And I remember them telling me that gave the food very nice flavor. So I was very surprised. But I had read this information, what we just read, because Prabhupada also mentions that in his Ishopanishad purports. So I was aware of that. But I didn't know about the cooking. Subsequently, it has been proved by modern science that cow dung contains all antiseptic properties. So Vedic knowledge is complete because it is above all doubts and mistakes. And Bhagavad-gita is the essence of all Vedic knowledge. Vedic knowledge is not a question of research. Our research is imperfect because we are researching things with imperfect senses. We have to accept perfect knowledge, which comes down, as it is stated in Bhagavad-gita, by the parampara, disciplic succession. We have to receive knowledge from the proper source in disciplic succession, beginning with the Supreme Spiritual Master, the Lord Himself, and handed down to a succession of spiritual masters. Arjuna, the student who took lessons from Lord Sri Krishna, accepts everything that he says without contradicting him. One is not allowed to accept one portion of Bhagavad-gita and not another. No, we must accept Bhagavad-gita without interpretation, without deletion, and without our own whimsical participation in the matter. The Gita should be taken as the most perfect presentation of Vedic knowledge. Vedic knowledge is received from transcendental sources, and the first words were spoken by the Lord Himself. So, here, Prabhupada is referring to when Lord Brahma, when he's first born, and he doesn't know how to create. All Brahma knows that is that he has this urge to create. So Brahma has to perform penance for thousands of years, and that penance is a form of bhakti yoga. And then Lord Narayan appears to Brahma and speaks 4 verses known as Chatu Shloki, which are the 4 original seed verses of Srimad Bhagavatam. With those 4 original verses of Bhagavatam, Brahma now knows how to engineer the creation of the universe. On his own, he didn't know. So the information was spoken to him by Lord Narayan, who appeared to him after Brahma performed many, many years of meditation and austerities and penance. The words spoken by the Lord are called apaurushaya, meaning that they are different from words spoken by a person of the mundane world who is infected with 4 defects. A mundaner is, number 1, sure to commit offense. 2, is invariably illusioned. 3, has the tendency to cheat others. And number 4, is limited by imperfect senses. With these 4 imperfections, one cannot deliver perfect information of all-pervading knowledge. The same information is there in Prabhupada's purports of Ishopanishad. Vedic knowledge is not imparted by such defective living entities. It was imparted unto the heart of Brahma, the first created living being, and Brahma in his turn disseminated this knowledge to his sons and disciples as he originally received it from the Lord. The Lord is Purnam, all perfect, and there is no possibility of his becoming subjected to the laws of material nature. So we already read that earlier today. But as again, Prabhupada likes to repeat things so that the point is driven home. One should therefore be intelligent enough to know that the Lord is the only proprietor of everything in the universe, and that he is the original creator, the creator of Brahma. In the 11th chapter, the Lord is addressed as Prapitamaha, because Brahma is addressed as Pitamaha, the grandfather, and he, meaning Krishna, is the creator of the grandfather. So no one should claim to be the proprietor of anything. One should accept only things which are set aside for him by the Lord as his quota for his maintenance. So there, Prabhupada is referencing the second shloka of Ishopanishad. Ishyabhasam idang sarvam yat kincha jagatam jagat. I can't remember the rest of the verse, but that is what Prabhupada is referencing, the second shloka. There are many examples given of how we are to utilize those things which are set aside for us by the Lord. This is also explained in Bhagavad-gita. In the beginning, Arjuna decided that he should not fight in the battle of Kurukshetra. This was his own decision. Arjuna told the Lord that it was not possible for him to enjoy the kingdom after killing his own kinsman. This decision was based on the body because he was thinking that the body was himself and that his bodily relations or expansions were his brothers, nephews, brothers-in-law, grandfathers, and so forth. Therefore, he wanted to satisfy his bodily demands. Bhagavad-gita was spoken by the Lord just to change this view. And at the end, Arjuna decides to fight under the directions of the Lord when he says, Karishye vachanam tava. I shall act according to your word. In this world, men are not meant for quarreling like cats and dogs. Men must be intelligent to realize the importance of human life and refuse to act like ordinary animals. A human being should realize that the aim of his life and this direction is given in all Vedic literatures. And here it is again, this is the third time. The essence is given in Bhagavad-gita. Vedic literature is meant for human beings, not for animals. Animals can kill other living animals, and there is no question of sin on their part. But if a man kills an animal for the satisfaction of his uncontrolled taste, he must be responsible for breaking the laws of nature. So this is why we are vegetarian. It's based on this principle, ahimsa, non-violence. Here, Prabhupada is also referring to a verse, probably the third verse of the Ishopanishad, same principle. In the Bhagavad-gita, it is clearly explained that there are three kinds of activities according to the different modes of nature: the activities of goodness, of passion, and ignorance. Similarly, there are three kinds of eatables also. We studied this in chapter 18. Eatables in goodness, passion, and ignorance. No, chapter 17. Sorry. Chapter 17, we studied that. All of this is clearly described. And if we properly utilize the instruction of Bhagavad-gita, then our whole life will become purified and ultimately we may be able to reach the destination which is beyond the material sky. And this is a perfect point to end today's class, because now Prabhupada's speaking, now he goes to a whole different topic. So we'll pick this up next week. Now, I'd like to say a little bit about Lord Nityananda, just a little bit, since it's his appearance day. And we should glorify Lord Nityananda. So hold on. Let me go. All right, hold on, everybody. I'll be right with you. I guess I have to do this. Here we go. Okay. So we changed the screen. Very good. So I'm just going to read a little bit from this chapter from the Chaitanya Charitamrita, the glories of Lord Nityananda Balaram. So Lord Chaitanya is actually Krishna, and Lord Nityananda is actually Balaram. So just as Balaram is Krishna's first expansion and his elder brother, Conundrum, first expansion, elder brother, because we're on the spiritual platform. So Nityananda is Lord Chaitanya's first expansion, and he's actually Lord Balaram. So let's look at some of these verses. Let me offer my obeisances to Lord Sri Nityananda, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, whose opulence is wonderful and unlimited. By his will, even a fool can understand his identity. All glories to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. All glories to Lord Nityananda. All glories to Advaita Acharya. And all glories to all the devotees of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. I have described the glory of Sri Krishna Chaitanya in 6 verses. Now in 5 verses, I shall describe the glory of Lord Nityananda. So you'll need to give me a second, because I want to go to a different section. Hold on, please. You can chant Hare Krishna in the meantime, because I have to go to a different section. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. One more time. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Okay, here we go. So he just mentioned 5 verses which describe Lord Nityananda. May Sri Nityananda Ram, look how he calls him, because we just read Nityananda is Balaram. So here he addresses him as Sri Nityananda Ram. May Sri Nityananda Ram be the object of my constant remembrance. Sankarshana, Sheshanaga, and the Vishnus who lie on the Karana ocean, Garbha ocean, and ocean of milk are his plenary full portions and portions of his plenary full portions. I surrender unto the lotus feet of Sri Nityananda Ram, who is known as Sankarshana in the midst of the Chatur Vyuha, consisting of Vasudeva, Sankarshana, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha. He possesses full opulences and resides in Vaikuntha Loka, far beyond the material creation. I offer my full obeisances unto the feet of Sri Nityananda Ram, whose partial representation, called Karanadakashayi Vishnu or Mahavishnu, lying on the Karana or causal ocean, is the original Purusha, the master of the illusory energy and the shelter of all the universes. I offer my full obeisances unto the feet of Sri Nityananda Ram, a partial part of whom is Garbhodakashayi Vishnu. From the navel of Garbhodakashayi Vishnu sprouts the lotus that is the birthplace of Lord Brahma, the engineer of the universe. Notice how Prabhupada translates. He doesn't say creator, engineer, because we just learned today, in today's class, actually Krishna is the creator. Brahma is the engineer. The stem of that lotus is the resting place of the multitude of planets. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the feet of Sri Nityananda Ram, whose secondary part is the Vishnu lying in the ocean of milk. That Kshirodakashayi Vishnu is the supersoul of all living entities. So now you know who is in your heart. We say in general Krishna, but specifically which Krishna? Kshirodakashayi Vishnu, and the maintainer of all the universes. Sheshanaga is his further subpart. Okay, so that will end today's class. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.